Washington Journal continues.
Congressman Al Green with us this morning, Democrat of Texas, member of the Homeland Security Committee, represents the Houston area, the 9th District of Texas. Congressman, I want to begin with the question that we were just asking our viewers. U.S. support to Ukraine, is it not enough? Is it too much? Or is it the right amount? How would you answer that?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Let me start, however, by thanking you for allowing me to be with you and explain to your audience that I have my mask on because we have a policy in our office of wearing our mask when we're in the presence of each other, and I have staffers assisting me this morning. I believe that this president has done an outstanding job. I have great faith in President Biden. President Biden has served in many capacities in the federal government. He was a senator, and while a senator, he served as chair of judiciary, chair of foreign relations, vice president of the United States thereafter. And I'm of the opinion that he's doing a fine job so far. I do believe that he has, with the sending of the $13.6 billion that Congress passed in the latest bill that he has signed, I think that's going to be very helpful. He has sent additional money, $650 million initially. We secured a $1 billion loan, and we've sent armaments to Ukraine. We've sent Stingers, we've sent Javelins, and we're now going to send Switchblades. These are weapons that can be used so that they can defend themselves against an aggressor. So I think this president has done a good job.
You heard the president of Ukraine, to you and your colleagues yesterday, repeat his calls for a no-fly zone. Where are you on that?
The no-fly zone is separate and apart from another hue and cry that he made, which was for planes. I think the president makes an excellent point when he mentions that a no-fly zone can trigger a world war, unlike we have seen before. So we have to be very careful and measured in terms of how we approach this. So for now, I would join the president with the premise that a no-fly zone could lead us to an area in our history that we've never been, and we don't want to go there if we can avoid it. Now, having said that, I think it's also important to say, I think that there's just so much killing of babies that we can take. I'm going to support peace. I don't believe in war, but killing babies is something that I don't think a civilized nation can stand. And the American people are tolerant, but we're seeing this in real time, and we're gonna tolerate. But I'm not sure that we'll tolerate killing babies.
So then.
That's a line that we don't want to see crossed.
It appears to have been crossed, Congressman. So
it has.
So what do you do?
That's why I said to you, I'm not sure how much of that we can take. Well, here's what I would say we do. I say we grant the request for the planes. I think that Ukraine can use planes for defensive purposes. If a person comes at you with a bazooka, and you have an automatic Kalashnikov Model 47, which is designed to kill people, and you use that, it's not in an offensive way at this point. You're defending yourself. I think Ukraine should have the planes. Now, there are those who say that the assault on Ukraine is coming from within Russia, and that as a result, planes would not be of great help against those assaults. My position is, let's not wait until the skies over Ukraine have been darkened with Russian planes. Let's get those planes to them while we can, before it becomes more difficult and perhaps even impossible. I think they deserve the opportunity to defend themselves. This was a sovereign country, is a sovereign country. They're autonomous. They have the right to determine their destiny. And we, unfortunately, have a moral imperative to help them. Back to your question of how much. Moral imperative because of the Budapest Memorandum. That Budapest Memorandum required them to give up all of their nuclear arsenal. Russia received it. It left them in a practical sense when it comes to the world and your possibility of having to deal with another nation, left them practically defenseless. They are. We have to help them. And it's about more than Ukraine. This is about freedom-loving people wherever they may be. Doesn't matter where you are. Dr. King was eminently correct. He said life is an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny. What impacts one directly impacts all indirectly. We see now that gas prices are going to go up around the globe because of what's happening in a distant place. The notion that if we leave the world alone, the world will leave us alone is flawed. We have a duty to take on the great challenges of our time. And I think planes would help Ukraine and help us defend democracy, not only in Ukraine, but for us right here in the United States of America.
Congressman, what did you think when the Ukrainian president invoked the words of Martin Luther King when he said, he said that Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream," and he said to you and your colleagues, "I have a need"?
I was seated on the front row next to Mr. Schiff, Adam, a few seats over from the speaker. And I had the opportunity to glance at the room. People were moved by it, as was the case with me. I was very, very moved by what he said. Dr. King's dream, of course, is that persons would live in harmony. Well, he has a need to help maintain a country and people, protect babies from being murdered so that his country can live in peace. This is about making sure that people who have done no harm to a neighbor are protected from that neighbor. Killing babies is unacceptable. Now, I have said I'm opposed to the no-fly zone right now, and I am, but I don't know how much of killing babies we'll be able to witness. I just don't know.
Okay.
I'm hurt by that.
Let's go to Bert, who's in Columbus, Georgia, Republican. Our first call for you, Congressman. Bert, go ahead.
Yes, I want to say to the congressman that I disagree with him on his representation of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a weak president. We wouldn't have inflation like we have. We wouldn't have gas prices like we have if he had started doing, hadn't shut down all the oil fields and shut down all the drilling. And also with the Ukrainians, he should have started giving the Ukrainians the weapons to defend themselves 6 months ago when he saw Putin was coming up on the border. And he knew back then when he said that if he just invades just a little bit, then we may give him a pass. But he hadn't just invaded a little bit. He has really leveled the country. And also, when I was 10 years old, I was watching the people come across the Evan Pettus Bridge, and I watched Bull Connor and all of his people, beat them up. And it was, even at 10 years old, I was affected by that. But then I realized all the people who was doing that, even the people coming and protesting, and then the people who was trying to stop them from protest, was all Democrats. So therefore, I could not be a Democrat because
Okay.
a Democrat.
Bert, we got a lot there. Congressman.
Yes, thank you. And I respect his opinion. I would defend his right to express himself and give his opinion. But I think it is obvious that he and I are in different places. I don't agree with him. I have a phrase that I have coined, I believe, and I've used this phrase sparingly, but there's something called a hindsight quarterback. Hindsight quarterback. With the benefit of hindsight, we can see the fallacies and the flaws. And there are times when it is appropriate to hindsight quarterback. But I think as it relates to this president, who has been in real time making some pretty tough decisions, and I think he's done a pretty good job. And for those who would blame the inflation solely on him, I would remind them that we had a pandemic and that we had bottlenecks and that it was very difficult to get the necessities of life in many cases and other things that would help us with our technology and our economy. It was very difficult to get those things through the supply chain. And as a result, this impacted inflation. Now, I'm with him on this point. I pay more attention to the supermarket than the stock market. He didn't say it in those words. And I'm concerned about what's happening with my constituents when they go in to buy things and the prices have gone up. But we do have to recognize that there are other factors associated with this, including what's happening now with Russia and gas prices going up. The American people want us to cease and desist as it relates to buying oil from Russia, gas from Russia, coal from Russia, seafood from Russia. They don't want us to buy anything from people who kill babies, murder babies. They don't want us to do it. And I supported that, and I still supported it. But I also realized that when you do that, it's going to impact gas prices, which will impact the transportation of food, which will impact the cost of food. So I'm saddened by what we're having to do. But killing babies is something that's very difficult to tolerate in my world. Killing anyone. But when it's a baby, it really changes the dynamics as I see life. So my hope is that Mr. Putin will cease and desist with his behavior, and that we can get back to a world where people can live together in harmony. We haven't mastered that, but it was much better than it was before Mr. Putin invaded Ukraine.
Luis in North Carolina, Democratic caller.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to say I disagree with that last caller. One thing we need to have is unity in this country in order to succeed. We need to stop talking about the president being weak. Putin is listening to everything you're saying. Also, with Congressman, I wanted to ask you about the planes. Isn't it that Poland can have the planes, but they don't want to deliver it because they don't want to be accused of stuff? They want to send the planes over to Germany or to a U.S. base to deliver the planes. Would put us in the big mix then.
Okay, let's talk about that complication, Congressman.
Well, there are complications, and the foundation for the complications rest on knowing that we have an aggressor who's invaded one country and may not stop with just one country. We don't know what it will take to satiate this kind of appetite for aggression. So I can understand the concern, but I do believe that we must find a way, because we cannot allow this to become the paradigm. You can't use planes for defensive purposes, but the opposition can use them for offensive purposes. If Russia is going to use planes to destroy Ukraine, the people of Ukraine ought to be able to use planes to save Ukraine. I'm not a person who believes that we just give Russia Ukraine. I just don't think we can do that. If you give an aggressor one country, where does it end? Where does it end? So I cannot go along with the notion that we don't allow them to defend themselves with planes. It's conventional weapon, and I think they should be allowed to have these conventional weapons.
Congressman, here's a headline from a local news station in Houston. Congressman Al Green addresses Russia's invasion of Ukraine, announces measures to aid Houston's Ukrainian community. How large is the Ukrainian community in your district?
Well, it numbers in the thousands, and I have met with the Consul General from Ukraine and other persons, and they know where I stand. And they also know that I stand for justice, and I'm working with the community. We want to make sure that we treat them fairly, and especially the immigrants who may be coming to the United States. As you know, we've accorded TPS, temporary protected status, to the persons from Ukraine who are in this country, which will give them 18 months in the country, and we can extend that. But I want to mention this as an aside. This is an opportunity to say it, and I don't want to forget it. The people in Ukraine who are not Ukrainians, not born there, maybe they're from some other country, maybe they're of a different hue, they have to be treated fairly too. When they want to exit the country, all persons exiting have to be treated the same. You can't decide that some people will have to stand in the back of the line. That's abhorrent to me. I've had to stand in back of lines. I had to go to colored water fountains. I had to sit in the back of the bus. So every person exiting will have to be treated the same. And that's a commitment that I've received as I've talked to the Consul General. And when we passed the legislation with this $13.6 billion in it, there's language in there with that requirement, treat all people the same. I'm for justice for everybody, not somebody, everybody wherever they happen to be.
Congressman, are you hearing from your constituents in the Ukrainian community that they need your help with getting their relatives, their friends out of the country and brought to them in the United States into your district? Do they want to sponsor them?
I haven't had that specific request, but I know that it's out there, and I would support helping people escape war. I would support doing in this country what we expect Poland to do, what we expect other countries to do. I would want us to lead by example. And President Biden does this, by the way. I appreciate him for leading by example. So I would want us to continue to lead by example and extend the hand of friendship. Make what is written on the Statue of Liberty mean something, not just words, not just words. Poor, huddled masses, yearning to be free. Make that mean something. Let's help these people in a time of need. Okay. Doesn't matter their color, doesn't matter race. The need is what we predicate the extension of the hand of friendship upon.
Joyce is in Portland, Oregon, independent. You're on the air, Joyce, with Congressman Al Green. Go ahead.
Oh, hello. I've listened to the callers as they were talking about Trump. But what they really don't understand is we have had several presidents, Republicans, Democrats, and, we've had those many presidents. But when they get to talking about Trump, they act like he's a god or something. Trump would have gave Ukraine to Russia. United States knew that Russia was trying to invade this country. It's done it twice. It did it to Georgia, Chechnya. He's trying to bring back the glory of the USSR. So they knew that he was going to do this. And they should have been prepared for it.
Congressman?
Well, I'm of the opinion that you can prepare for many things, and you should prepare for those things that you can anticipate. I'm just not sure who was prepared to believe that Russia would put thousands of troops on the border and then rush them, if you would, into another country. So I'm prepared now to do whatever we can to protect the nation of Ukraine and the people therein. It's the people that I'm concerned about. And I would add something else that I think is important. I've talked about the babies. So I want to come back to that one more time. And I beg your indulgence if I seem to be superfluous and overly repetitious. But here is something that Dr. King called to our attention. Dr. King, a person who was called a Prince of Peace, reminded us that a person who hasn't found something worth dying for isn't fit to live. If you haven't found something worth dying for, not fit to live. Killing babies as is being done is unacceptable. We at some point, I don't know where that point is, I think the American people are just not going to tolerate it. Either we'll shut it off and it won't come into the living rooms, we just won't cover it, or if it's continued to be covered the way it's being covered, the American people are not going to stand for that.
Congressman, are you saying that putting U.S. soldiers on the ground, boots on the ground, and risking their lives is something that you would do or agree to if this continues?
I'm saying that I support what the president is doing currently. I don't want to see us go into a World War III. But at some point, I just don't know how we can watch babies being murdered and not do whatever we can to be of assistance. I believe that the people of Ukraine have demonstrated the courage and the wherewithal to defend themselves if we give them the proper munitions. And I'm for giving them the proper munitions to defend themselves. That includes planes. That is my position. And I stand by that, and I stand with this president.
Okay. Sean, in Colorado, Republican, we'll go to you next.
Yes, hi. Isn't it true, Congressman Green, that the New Deal, the killing energy, has caused this weakness from Biden, and that the Biden crime family is corrupted? And you need to stop the mass theater that you're wearing on your face because COVID's over. And also, free the January 6ers. That's a big scam. Thank you.
Well, sir, there are times when I think a person's words refute themselves. I respect you. You're entitled to your opinion. But I think your words speak volumes about your opinion. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Jay, Riverdale, Maryland, independent.
Yes, definitely independent. You know, you said you will move. He is using the words of Dr. King, a man of peace, to promote war. You move by that. I mean, the Black Caucus as a whole, it's such a disappointment. Now, I have never heard you be so passionate about the suffering of Black people in this country. Y'all have 50-plus voting blocks in the House of Representatives. Y'all have never stopped anything to attack something for Black people. Y'all are holding up the progress in the community. Now, you mentioned the Budapest memo, but nobody ever talked about, and Greta, you never have anybody on to talk about the agreement in February of 1990. James Baker told Mikhail Gorbachev that there will be no expansion of NATO past East Germany. You never talk about that. It's all about war, war, war. You always find money for war. You don't talk peace. And the Black Caucus, CARCASS, y'all are just like a caucus because y'all don't push anything for Black people.
Okay.
Like other.
Jay, we got your points. Congressman.
Thank you, Jay. You've afforded me an opportunity to cover some things that ordinarily we might not cover. I have spoken out on other issues. I don't speak for the Black Caucus. I'm not the chair of the caucus. We have a great chair, and I support the chair. But I speak for myself and those who agree with me, and a good many people do. So let me just share some of the things that I have pending in Congress now. Legislation, resolution for a Department of Reconciliation. I believe that we have not reconciled in this country, especially as it relates to our seminal sin, which was slavery. We've not reconciled. A Department of Reconciliation with a Secretary of Reconciliation comparable to a Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Defense would help us reach the point wherein we better understand each other and the problems that confront each other by virtue of being just who we are. So I believe this is important, Secretary of Reconciliation. I also have legislation pending that would change the name of the Richard Russell Office Building. Mr. Russell was a person who was unkind to people of color. He was a self-proclaimed white supremacist. His name ought not be on a building supported by tax dollars. We in Congress are critical of others for what they do in terms of having representations of bigotry and xenophobia, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, all of the various insidious phobias. Well, we have to be critical of ourselves for allowing Richard Russell's name to stay on that building. I have recently made comments about the passage of a law that will make it a crime to lynch a person. Lynching, very critical of it. If you go on my website, you'll see a news article that was written about that. And I think you'll see that I have spoken out with a degree of passion about the issues of our time as they impact the people within this time.
We'll go to Ken in Spokane, Washington. Republican caller.
Yes, Mr. Green, nice to talk with you. I hear your passion about the killing of small children and babies in this war, and I agree with those people, with you, that these people should be punished to the extent of the law. However, I'm really discouraged in you, and I feel that you're a hypocrite in the fact that throughout your career you have voted for the abortion of 60 million babies in this country. Shame on you. How can you say that you're for the protection of children when you allow this to happen? That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. And I don't profess to be perfect. I'm a public servant, not a perfect servant. But I do say this. Women have some say over what happens to them more explicitly. They have some say over their bodies. They are sovereign. Women are sovereign. I think that we have somehow in this country as men been of the opinion that we could legislate for women in ways that women differ with us. So I tend to believe that women can make some decisions about their bodies and how they manage their bodies. And I will stand with that premise. I've never said that I personally support abortion. I have said that women have a right to choose, and I support their right to choose what happens to their bodies and their right to consult with their families and their physicians and other trusted persons when making these decisions. I don't think that the long arm of the law extends to the womb. I think women have the right to choose.
Congressman Al Green, Democrat of Texas. Thank you, sir, for talking to our viewers this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.